Welcome to day 4 of Oddtober, and in today's video I will be covering the case of the Bennington Triangle. The Bennington Triangle is a name given to an area in Vermont where multiple people have gone missing from 1945 through 1950. There isn't an exact consensus about what towns make up the Bennington Triangle, but some of the ones that are most commonly agreed upon are, of course, Bennington, Woodford, Shaftesbury, Somerset, with Glatsbury Mountains being in the middle of all of these. The town was pretty secluded from the rest of the world, with the area being pretty heavily wooded. Though it was once considered an up-and-coming town to live in, many of the natives ended up having to vacate, which left the town pretty empty and eerie. During 1945 through 1950, 5 different people went missing in the Bennington Triangle. The first instance happened on November 12, 1945, when a man named Mitty Rivers went missing while out hunting. Mitty was a hunting guide, and he had taken 4 other hunters out with him that afternoon. They had made their way through the mountains, and Mitty was at the head of the group as he led them back down the mountain, until suddenly he wasn't there anymore. It was almost as if Mitty had vanished into thin air. The community was really shocked to learn that he had gone missing, because Mitty was a very skilled outdoorsman. Mitty was really familiar with the area and with being outdoors, and so a lot of people found it really strange that of all people to go missing, it would be him. An extensive search took place, and over 300 members of the community joined the police in an effort to locate Mitty. However, there was no sign of him, and the only thing that had any relation to him was a single rifle cartridge that had been located in a stream. The next incident took place on December 1st the following year, when 18-year-old Paula Weldon went missing while on a hike. A common theme with all of these disappearances is that everyone went missing in the last quarter of the year. And if you're familiar with New England winters, that is a really rough time of the year to be outdoors in general. Paula went hiking on the Long Trail, which I believe is the last trail that Mitty was seen. Paula was a fairly experienced hiker, and so when she told her family that she would be going hiking that afternoon, it wasn't out of character for her. An employee from the local newspaper, the Bennington Banner, confirmed that he saw Paula on the trail that afternoon, and an elderly couple confirmed that they had seen her as well. The couple stated that they had been about 100 yards behind Paula, and at a certain point on the trail she had rounded a corner, and when they rounded that same corner there was no sign of her up ahead. Once those close to Paula realized she was missing, an extensive search was held for her as well. The FBI even offered a $5,000 reward for any information that would help them find Paula. Paula is said to have been wearing a red shirt with no jacket and a pair of jeans, which would have made it really difficult to withstand the elements, as it was reported to be about 8 degrees that night. Despite the thorough and extensive search, no evidence of Paula was found. Some speculated that Paula moved to Canada to live with a boyfriend, or that she retreated into the mountains to live a life of solidarity. Her fate remains a mystery, and no sign of her has been uncovered since. The next disappearance took place on December 1st, 1949, when James E Tedford went missing, exactly 3 years to the date after Paula went missing. James was a veteran who had been visiting family in the St. Albans area, and his family reports that they last saw him when they dropped him off at a bus station to take a bus back to the Bennington area. It was confirmed by the bus driver and other bus passengers that James was on the bus up until the last stop before Bennington, and no one knows where he went after that. His belongings were still on the luggage rack, but James never claimed them, and no one had seen him exit the bus, but he had definitely been on there at the previous stop. Many of the passengers and the bus driver are completely sure that they had seen James up until the last stop before Bennington, meaning that James would have had to have gone missing while still riding on the bus. And when the seat that James had been sitting in was checked over, there was a bus schedule laying on his empty seat. No one has seen or heard from James since, but all of the passengers as well as the driver are sure that he never got off the bus. So it really is a mystery about where he could have gone. The next disappearance was an 8-year-old boy named Paul Jepson on October 12, 1950. Paul went missing while he was spending the day running errands with his mother in her truck. Paul's mother stopped so that she could feed some pigs, and Paul decided to wait in the truck since it didn't typically take his mother very long to feed the pigs. She had periodically checked on him as she turned around to make sure that he was still in the car, but on one instance, when she turned around, Paul was gone. Police brought in dogs to track Paul's scent, and they followed it down the road to some train tracks, but this is where Paul's scent disappeared. This is also reported as being the exact area where Paula Weldon went missing as well. Paul was reported to be wearing a red jacket, and while this doesn't necessarily mean the cases are related, I find it really interesting that their names are Paul and Paula, and they both were last seen wearing the color red while going missing in basically the same area. Since red is such a bold, deep color, you would think it would be easy to spot someone who had gone missing if they were wearing it. But just like all of the others, no sign of Paul was ever found. Authorities believe that Paul had been abducted, but Paul's father actually said that a few days before going missing, Paul had been saying that he felt drawn and called to the mountains. At the time, his family did think it was odd, but after Paul went missing, his family really started to wonder what exactly Paul meant by that. The final person in the 5-year span to go missing was a 53-year-old woman named Frida Langer, and she went missing on October 28, 1950. Frida had been camping with her family, and on this day she went hiking with her cousin Herbert. While they were on the hike, Frida fell into a stream, and so she told Herbert to wait for her, and she would turn back around to go back to their campsite where she would change into some clean, dry clothes. Since Frida was an experienced hiker, Herbert figured that she would be right back, especially since they weren't too far from their campsite. After waiting for quite some time and no sign of Frida came, Herbert decided to head back to the campsite. This is when he learned that Frida had never made it back to the campsite, and no one had seen her since she had left with Herbert earlier that day to start on their hike. 5 separate searches were conducted over a 2-week time span, and this involved aircrafts and over 300 volunteers. But unlike the others, Frida's body was eventually found. What was odd was that the area where her body was found had previously been searched pretty extensively multiple times. Frida's body was found 7 months after her initial disappearance, and because of this, her body was so heavily decomposed that there was no way to figure out what the cause of death was. Up until recently, these were the only known cases of people going missing within the Bennington Triangle, but that changed when the skeletal remains of a woman from Connecticut were found. And what is especially weird is that this woman was known by everybody as red, the same color that Paul and Paula had been wearing when they went missing. And this isn't the only weird thing that involves the color red. In August of 2021, a man named Joseph was found in his red truck, and it appeared that he had shot himself in the head. Joseph had been reported missing weeks before his body was found. I find it very interesting that a lot of these people were wearing red, or were in a red truck, or called red, and red is a really popular color, so it could just be a complete coincidence, but I do find it to be pretty interesting that the color red keeps popping up like that. The Bennington Triangle has also been named one of the most haunted locations in America by the TV show The Most Haunted Locations in America. Since most of the bodies were never uncovered and all of the cases remain unsolved, there's a lot of speculation about what exactly took place in the Bennington Triangle that caused all of these people to go missing or end up dead. Some speculate that a Bigfoot-like creature called the Bennington Monster might have attacked the hikers. Others believe that these disappearances are all tied to alien abductions. There is also native folklore that states that the mountain will swallow people whole. Others believe that this is the work of a serial killer, which could have made sense for the original 5 disappearances, but really doesn't make sense when you factor in the 2 recent bodies that were discovered there. Whatever the reason is, I find it really creepy and it leaves me feeling pretty disturbed. and I certainly will never be going near the Bennington Triangle myself. I'm curious to hear what you think. Do you think it was the work of a serial killer, or do you think that despite being skilled outdoorsmen, these people ended up succumbing to the elements after getting lost? Do you think there's a paranormal explanation for these disappearances? I honestly don't know what to think. Let me know your thoughts down below, and if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like. I will be posting day 5 of Oddtober on Saturday, so if you want to subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified when I upload that video, I would love that. And that's it for today's video, and I will catch you in the next one.